Helladic is a modern archaeological term meant to identify a sequence of periods characterizing the culture of mainland ancient Greece during the Bronze Age. The term is commonly used in archaeology and art history. It was intended to complement two parallel terms, Cycladic, identifying approximately the same sequence with reference to the Aegean Bronze Age, and Minoan, with reference to the civilization of Crete. The scheme applies primarily to pottery and is a relative dating system. The pottery at any given site typically can be ordered into early, middle, and late on the basis of style and technique. The total time window allowed for the site is then divided into these periods proportionately. As it turns out, there is a correspondence between early overall Greece, etc. Also, some absolute dates, or dates obtained by non-comparative methods, can be used to date the periods under preferable whenever they can be obtained. However, the relative structure was devised before the age of carbon dating. Typically, only relative dates are obtainable and form a structure for the characterization of Greek prehistory. Objects are generally dated by the pottery of the site found in associative contexts. Other objects can be arranged into early, middle, and late as well, but pottery is used as a marker. Helladic society and culture have antecedents in the Neolithic period in Greece, with many innovations being developed and manifesting during the second and third phases of the early Helladic period, such as bronze metallurgy, monumental architecture and fortifications, a hierarchical social organization, and vigorous contacts with other areas of the Aegean. These innovations would undergo further changes during the Middle Helladic period, marked by the spread of Minoan ware, and the Late Helladic period, which was the time when Mycenaean Greece flourished. Etymology. The three terms, Helladic, Cycladic, and Minoan, refer to location of origin. Thus, Middle Minoan objects might be found in the Cyclades, but they are not on that account Middle Cycladic. The scheme tends to be less applicable in areas on the periphery of the Aegean, such as the Levant. Pottery that might imitate Helladic or Minoan cultural models and yet be locally manufactured. Periodization. The early, middle, and late scheme can be applied at different levels. Rather than use such cumbersome terms as early, archaeologists by convention use I, II, III for the second level, A, B, C from the third level, I, II, III for the fourth level, and A, B, C for the fifth. Not all levels are present at every site. If additional levels are required, another early, middle, or late can be appended. The Helladic period is subdivided as settlements of the Helladic period. These are the estimated populations of hamlets, villages, and towns of the Helladic period over time. Note that there are several problems with estimating the sizes of individual settlements, and the highest estimates for a given settlements in a given period may be several times the lowest. Early Helladic. The early Helladic period of Bronze Age Greece is generally characterized by the Neolithic agricultural population importing bronze and copper, as well as using rudimentary bronze working techniques first developed in Anatolia with which they had cultural contacts. The A period corresponds in time to the Old Kingdom in Egypt. Important A sites are clustered on the Aegean shores of the mainland in Boeotia and Argolida coastal islands such as Aegina and Euboea, marked by pottery showing influences from western Anatolia and the introduction of the fast-spinning version of the potter's wheel. The large longhouse called a megron is introduced in A2. The infiltration of Anatolian cultural models was not accompanied by widespread site destruction. Early Helladic I. The early Helladic I period, also known as the Utresis culture, is characterized by the presence of unslipped and burnished to red-slipped and burnished pottery at Caracas and other sites. In terms of ceramics and settlement patterns, there is considerable continuity between the EHI period and the preceding final Neolithic period. Changes in settlement location during the EHI period are attributed to alterations in economic practices. Early Helladic II. The transition from early Helladic I to the early Helladic II period occurred rapidly and without disruption, where multiple socio-cultural innovations were developed, such as metallurgy, a hierarchical social organization, a monumental architecture, and fortifications. Changes in settlement during the EHII period were accompanied with alterations in agricultural practices. Early Helladic III. The early Helladic II period came to an end at Lerna with the destruction of the House of Tiles, a corridor house. The nature of the destruction of EHII sites was at first attributed to an invasion of Greeks and/or Indo-Europeans during the early Helladic III period. However, this is no longer maintained given the lack of uniformity in the destruction of EHII sites and the presence of EHII-EHII-IMH continuity in settlements such as Lythares, Thessalonica, etc. Furthermore, the presence of new, intrusive cultural elements such as apsidal houses, terracotta anchors, shaft-hole hammocks, ritual tumuli, and intramural burials precede the EHII period in Greece and are in actuality attributed to indigenous developments, as well as continuous contacts during the EHII-IMH period between mainland Greece and various areas such as Western Asia Minor, the Cyclades, Albania, and Dalmatia. Changes in climate also appear to have contributed to the significant cultural transformations that occurred in Greece between the EHII period and the EHII period. Middle Helladic. In Greece, the Middle Helladic period was a period of cultural retrogression, which first manifested in the preceding EHII period. The MH period is characterized by the wide-scale emergence of Minoan ware, which may be directly related to the people whom ancient Greek historians called Minoans. A group of monochrome burnished pottery from Middle Helladic sites was conventionally dubbed Minoan ware by Troy's discoverer Heinrich Schliemann. Grey Minoan ware was first identified as the pottery introduced by a Middle Bronze Age migration. The theory, however, is outdated as excavations at Lerna in the 1950s revealed the development of pottery styles to have been continuous. In general, painted pottery decos are rectilinear and abstract until Middle Helladic III, when Cycladic and Minoan influences inspired a variety of curvilinear and even representational motifs. The Middle Helladic period corresponds in time to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. Settlements draw more closely together and tend to be sited on hilltops. Middle Helladic sites are located throughout the Peloponnese and central Greece as far north as the Spercheios River Valley, Malthae in Messenia and Lerna. The only Middle Helladic sites to have been thoroughly excavated. Late Helladic. The Late Helladic period is the time when Mycenaean Greece flourished, under new influences from Minoan Crete and the Cyclades. Those who made LH pottery sometimes inscribed the work with a syllabic script, linear B, which has been deciphered as Greek. LH is divided into LHI, LHII, and LHIIN, of which LHI and LHII overlap. Late Minoan ware and LHII overtakes it. LHIII is further subdivided into LHIII, LHIIIB, and LHIIIC. The table below provides the approximate dates of the late Helladic phases on the Greek mainland. Late Helladic.The LHI pottery is known from the fill of the shaft graves of Lerna and the settlements of Voroulia and Nicaria, Ios Stephanos, and Karakou. Faramark divided the LH in phases A and B, but Faramark's LHIB has been reassigned to LHIIA by Oliver Dickinson. Some recent C14 dates from the Sumgaisa site north of Mycenae indicate LHI was dated to between 1675–1650 and 1600–1550 BCE, which is earlier than the assigned pottery dates by about 100 years. The Thera eruption also occurred during LHI, variously dated within the 1650 to 1625 BCE span. Not found at Thera, but extant in late LHI from Messenia, and therefore likely commencing after the eruption, is a material culture known as Peloponnesian LHI. This is characterized by tall funnel-like Keftiu cups of type 3, small closed shapes such as squat jugs decorated with hatched loops or simplified spirals, dark on light lustrous painted motifs, which includes small neat types of simple linked spiral such as varieties of hook spiral or wave spiral, forms of the hatched loop and double axe, and accessorial rows of small dots and single or double wavy lines. Also, the ripple pattern on Keftiu cups. These local innovations continued into the LHIIA styles throughout the mainland. Late Helladic.The description of the LHIIA is mainly based on the material from Kourikoou East Alley. Domestic and palatial shapes are distinguished. There are strong links between LHIIA and LMIB. LHIIB began before the end of LMIB and sees a lessening of Cretan influences. Pure LHIIB assemblages are rare and originate from Tiryns, Asin and Karakou. C14 dates from Sumgaisa indicate LHII was dated to between 1600 1550 and 1435–1405 BCE, the start of which is earlier than the assigned pottery date by about 100 years, but the end of which nearly corresponds to the pottery phase. In Egypt, both periods of LHII correspond with the beginning of its imperial period, from Hatshepsut to Thutmosis III. Late Helladic.3 LHII and LMII are contemporary. Toward LMIIB, non-Helladic ware from the Aegean ceases to be homogeneous, insofar as LMIIB differs from Helladic. It should at most be considered a sub-Minoan variant of LHIIB. The uniform and widely spread LHIIA-1 pottery was originally defined by the material from the ramp house at Mycenae, the palace at Thebes and Triaderite Rhodes. There is material from Asin, Athens, Sparta, Nicaria and the Atreus Bodros. Rubbish sealed under the dromos of the treasury of Atreus at Mycenae as well. C14 dates from Sumgaisa indicate LHIIA-1 should be more nearly 1435–1406 to 1390–1370 BCE, slightly earlier than the pottery phase but by less than 50 years. LHIIA-1 ware has also been found in Masathoyark in Hittite Anatolia. The LHIIA-2 pottery marks the Mycenaean expansion covering most of the eastern Mediterranean. There are many new shapes. The motifs of the painted pottery continue from LHIIA-1 but show a great deal of standardization. In Egypt, the Amarna site contains LHIIIA, one where during the reign of Amenhotep III, and LHIIIA, two where during that of his son Akhenaten. It also has the barest beginnings of LHIIIB. LHIIIA, two whereas in the Ulubaran shipwreck, which sank in the 14th century BCE. Again, Sumai's dates are earlier, 1390–1370 to 1360–1325 BCE, but LHIIIA, two where also exists in a burn layer of Militu which likely occurred early in the reign of Mursili II and therefore some years prior to Mursili's eclipse in 1312 BCE. The transition period between IIIA and IIIB begins after 1320 BCE, but not long after. The definition of the LHIIIB by Faramark was mainly based on grave finds and the settlement material from Zygris. It has been divided into two subphases by Elizabeth B. French, based on the finds from Mycenae and the West Wall at Tiryns. LHIIIB. Two assemblages are sparse, as painted pottery is rare in tombs, and many settlements of this period ended by destruction, leaving few complete pots behind. LHIIIB pottery is associated in the Greek mainland palaces with the Linear B archives. Pollack's proposed LHIIIB boundary would make LHIIIB contemporary in Anatolia with the resurgent Hittites following Mursili's eclipse, in Egypt with the 19th dynasty, also known as the Ramessides, and in northern Mesopotamia with Assyria's ascendancy over Mitanni. The end of LHIIIB is associated with the destruction of Ugarit, whose ruins contain the last of that pottery. The Sumai's date for the end of LHIIIB is 1211–90 BCE. The beginning of LHIIIC, therefore, is now commonly set into the reign of Queen Tusre. The LHIIIC has been divided into LHIIIC-1 and LHIIIC-2 by Faramark, based on materials from tombs in Mycenae, Assen, Kefalonia, and Rhodes. In the 1960s, the excavations of the citadel at Mycenae and of Lefkandi in Euboea yielded stratified material revealing significant regional variation in LHIIIC, especially in the later phases. Late LHIIIC pottery is found in Troy VIIA and a few pieces in Tarsus. It was also made locally in the Philistine settlements of Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gath, and Gaza. Fortified settlements. During the Helladic period, a number of major advances were developed, including fortified urban settlements with monumental buildings such as corridor houses, which may prove the existence of complex societies organized by an elite, or at least achieving corporate, proto-city-state form. One of these settlements was Manika, located in Euboea, dated to the early Helladic period too. The settlement covered an area of 70 to 80 hectares, was inhabited by 6,000–15,000 people, and was one of the largest settlements of the Bronze Age in Greece. Another settlement was Lerna in the Argolid region, which was perhaps the most important and wealthiest of early Helladic sites. The settlement has a monumental building known as the House of the Tiles, a corridor house, notable for several architectural features that were advanced for its time, such as its roof being covered by baked tiles, which gave the building its name. The structure dates to the early Helladic II period and is sometimes interpreted as the dwelling of an elite member of the community, a proto-palace, or an administrative center. Alternatively, it has also been considered to be a communal structure or the common property of the townspeople. The exact functions of the building remain unknown due to a lack of small finds indicating the specific uses of the building. The house had a stairway leading to a second story, and was protected by a tiled roof. Debris found at the site contained thousands of terracotta tiles having fallen from the roof, although such roofs were also found in the early Helladic site of Vitka, and later in the Mycenaean towns of Gela and Media. They only became common in Greek architecture in the 7th century BC. The walls of the House of the Tiles were constructed with sun-dried bricks on stone Cyclades. Other fortified settlements include Tiryns, which covered an area of 5.9 hectares sustaining 1,180–1,770 people, and had a large tiled two-storied roundhouse with a diameter of 28 meters on the upper citadel. It may have served as a palace, a temple, or perhaps it was a communal granary. Other sites include ISNI, which covered an area of 1 hectare and had a population of perhaps up to 1,250. Utresis, covering 8 hectares with an estimated population of 1,600–2,400. Thebes, covering 20 hectares with a population of 4,000–6,000. Lefkandi and Colonna, a densely populated settlement with impressive fortifications, monumental stone buildings and sophisticated town planning. Already before 2500–2400 BC, Colonna experienced remarkable economic growth and had its own administrative corridor or house, the so-called Hausum Felsron. During the phase Aegean of 3240–300 BC, which corresponds to the transition phase Lefkandi I Castri, the evidence of the economic structure and administrative and social organization of the community become more clear. The White House constitutes the monumental community building that succeeds the Hausum Felsron, which had the same function. Colonna may constitute the Aegean's first state, as it appears to be the earliest ranked society in the area outside Minoan Crete, and perhaps a political center in the Middle Helladic period, where it achieved state level after the Minoans but before the Mycenaeans. Population. Multivariate analyses of craniometric data derived from Helladic skeletal material indicate a strong morphological homogeneity in the Bronze Age. Osteological record, disproving the influx of foreign populations between the early Helladic and Middle Helladic periods. Ultimately, the Bronze Age inhabitants of mainland Greece represent a single and homogeneous population of Mediterranean provenance.